at the moment that Diana, Princess of Wales, has in fact been killed in that car accident.
For over 2 decades, the story of Princess Diana's final hours has been told and retold, capturing the imaginations of millions around the world. From official crash investigations to endless tabloid reports, it seemed we knew every grim detail. Yet in the shadows, one man quietly shouldered the burden of truth. Her bodyguard during her last summer of freedom, a figure tasked with keeping Diana safe, until the exact moment he could not. A secret romance. Princess Diana's life story has always been a mix of fairy tale magic and grim reality. She captured hearts with her beauty and grace, but behind her public image lay private struggles, personal heartbreak, and endless media harassment. In 1997, she embarked on a bold new chapter when she got involved with film producer Dodi Fayed, a man whose glamour seemed to match her own desire for romance and excitement. Over decades, many have questioned what really happened in those final weeks. Now, a former bodyguard has stepped forward with new claims that throw fresh light on a relationship that ended in the most tragic way possible. People always talk about Princess Diana as if they understood what she was going through. The truth, says the bodyguard, is that Diana was at a crossroads in the summer of 1997. She had divorced Prince Charles the year before, and she was eager to redefine herself, no longer just the people's princess, but a private individual in search of love and freedom. It was a kind of rebirth, one that came with the hope of escaping life behind the palace gates. Her romance with Dodi Fayed was sudden, passionate, and shocking to anyone who'd watched her before. He was the son of billionaire Mohammed Al Fayed, the owner of Harrods and the Ritz Hotel in Paris. He was also a flashy character who enjoyed mingling with Hollywood stars and throwing grand parties on private yachts. The bodyguard suggests that Dodi offered Diana an escape from the controlled environment she had always known. She supposedly felt safe stepping onto his father's yacht in the south of France, away from the typical line of photographers that took positions outside Kensington Palace day after day. When images did leak of Diana and Dodi cuddling or kissing, the tabloids went wild. Yet, according to the bodyguard, Diana was in a strangely optimistic mood during that time. She was tired of the constant lens pointed at her face, but she was also convinced she could somehow handle it. Dodi was famously generous with lavish gifts, top-floor suites, and dreamy vacations. Diana had rarely experienced a relationship that allowed her to unwind without rigid royal protocols overshadowing every move. What people may not realize, though, is that Diana had just left behind another relationship. A deeper, more private love with heart surgeon Hasnat Khan. Friends of the princess still debate whether she was truly over Hasnat, or if Dodi was simply a more public, carefree shift of direction. The bodyguard hints that she might have been torn. However, from the outside, it seemed that she and Dodi were enjoying a magical summer traveling through the Riviera. The bodyguard himself had to arrange their security, or at the very least, keep an eye on the paparazzi that followed them everywhere they went. Even though the pair tried to stay discreet, pictures of them hugging on deck frequently appeared in magazines. The bodyguard claims Diana never confirmed that she and Dodi were engaged, even though rumor had it he was about to propose. Some believe that Mohammed Al Fayed had grand visions of tying the Al Fayed name to British royalty, while others argue that Diana was committed to forging her own path and was cautious about jumping into marriage again. According to the bodyguard, Diana wanted to keep people guessing about the seriousness of her relationship with Dodi. She was certainly fond of him, and they spent hours talking about what the future might hold. At the same time, the glare of publicity around them was so severe that it felt like they were living in a pressure cooker. That tension, in the bodyguard's words, became the backdrop for the night of August 30th, 1997. Diana and Dodi were looking for a quiet, romantic time in Paris. They wanted privacy, which the bodyguard says was already in short supply. People who saw them earlier in the day remembered that they seemed cheerful and affectionate. But beneath that calm surface, the paparazzi were already staking out various exits around the Ritz, eager to get more pictures and sell them to tabloids across Europe. Diana might have acted like the constant coverage didn't bother her, but the bodyguard insists she was exhausted. Exhausted from the cameras, from speculation about engagements, from a media that seemed determined to photograph her every breath. Red flags. The bodyguard claims were ignored. most major tragedies come with warning signs that people only recognize after the fact. According to the bodyguard, this was definitely the case. On the night Diana and Dodi died. Although so many stories have focused on the paparazzi's chase, the driver's intoxication, or even royal conspiracies, the bodyguard insists that several details could have changed everything if only someone had spoken up sooner. He points first to the overall security arrangements. Diana was arguably the most famous woman in the world, even after losing her official HRH title. She was used to traveling with skilled protection officers, who followed protocols hammered out by palace insiders. But once she stepped out of official royal circles and into a private billionaire's domain, some of those professional layers fell away. The bodyguard claims that by the time they got to Paris, security was ad hoc. Nobody seemed fully in charge of deciding which routes were safest, let alone checking whether the designated driver was in any condition to handle that responsibility. He also believes that trusting the Ritz to handle their exit might have been a fatal oversight. Dodi wanted so badly to outsmart the paparazzi that he proposed an elaborate decoy plan. 2 cars would exit from the front of the hotel, cameras flashing, while the real duo, Diana, Dodi, and bodyguard Trevor Rees-Jones, would sneak out the back in a black Mercedes. It sounds clever in theory, but the bodyguard reveals that it was put together at the last minute. The paparazzi had practically sniffed it out immediately. Some staff members, the bodyguard adds, saw the paparazzi lingering in suspicious spots. If anyone realized that the decoy plan was compromised, they didn't pull the plug. Another red flag was the condition of the driver, Henri Paul. He worked as deputy head of security for the Ritz, but that didn't mean he was fit to handle a high-pressure chase on Paris roads. Subsequent toxicology reports indicated that he had been drinking. Some say people noticed he smelled of alcohol. Others claimed he seemed calm. The bodyguard is adamant that a formal check or a backup plan should have been triggered the moment there was doubt. Instead, Dodi and Diana, under pressure, in a rush, apparently chose to trust him because they were desperate for a quick escape. Then there were the paparazzi themselves, no longer just snapping photos from a distance, but actively maneuvering through traffic, swerving on motorbikes, and racing ahead to block the Mercedes. The bodyguard claims that the night was already tense, and ignoring how bad the chase had become was a recipe for disaster. Between the late hour, the urgency to evade cameras, and the possibility of an impaired driver, everything came together in one catastrophic moment. The bodyguard believes these red flags could have been addressed. Instead, no one stepped in to call off the late-night plan or ensure a more professional driver was found. In his eyes, that's the real tragedy. A series of small, preventable mistakes that ended up costing Diana and Dodi their lives. While official inquiries often highlight specific flaws, speeding, alcohol, paparazzi aggression, the bodyguard says he saw it as an overall breakdown. Everyone was a little too confident that they could handle the situation, from evading paparazzi to controlling the route through Paris. Nobody wanted to slow down and rethink the plan. The Mercedes in the underpass. The collision in the Pont de l'Alma tunnel has become one of the most infamous traffic accidents in modern history. The bodyguard wasn't inside that Mercedes himself, but from the evidence and testimony he's gathered, including what one survivor recounts, he has painted a harrowing picture. He describes how Henri Paul raced away from the Ritz, with Trevor Rees-Jones in the front passenger seat and Diana and Dodi in the back. Chased by a swarm of paparazzi on motorcycles, they sped through city streets in hopes of buying some privacy, even if it was just for the few minutes it took to get to Dodi's apartment. The underpass was dimly lit, and often a spot where local drivers didn't expect to be going at high speed. Witnesses posted near the entrance to the tunnel said the Mercedes seemed to be traveling faster than normal. People recall the squeal of tires, the rush of engine noise, and then an awful crunch as the car collided with the concrete pillar. According to official inquests, Dodi and Henri Paul died on impact. Trevor Rees-Jones, who wore a seatbelt, was severely injured in the crash, sustaining massive facial damage that required extensive reconstructive surgery. Diana was found alive but in dire condition. Immediately after the crash, paparazzi continued to arrive. While some tried to help, others were busy snapping photos. It was one of those moments that would later be used as evidence of how twisted paparazzi culture had become. Instead of calling emergency responders, they were eager to get the perfect shot. The bodyguard suggests that the frenzy around the car might have even worsened the chaos, preventing calm, orderly rescue efforts. The bodyguard says that what still haunts him is the sound of conflicting information in the aftermath. Some bodyguards claimed to have heard crying from inside the car, while others were unsure if Diana was still conscious. A few minutes felt like hours. By the time paramedics and firefighters arrived, they had a giant obstacle course of onlookers and cameras to get through. The bodyguard points to the first responder's story, often identified as a firefighter named Galen, or Gourmelon, who found Diana still breathing inside the wreck. That, to him, underscores how close they were to saving her. She was far from unresponsive at the scene. She still had a fighting chance. But the interior of the Mercedes was crushed. The front end was unrecognizable, seats pushed forward, glass shattered across the floor. The bodyguard notes that at first glance, many people at the scene didn't realize it was Princess Diana at all. Some recognized Dodie, or they pieced it together when they saw the paparazzi going wild. For the bodyguard, it's one of the darkest ironies. She wanted to avoid the press that evening, and yet here she was, surrounded by camera flashes and strangers in her most vulnerable state. Her last words and final moments over the years. Countless rumors have circulated about Diana's last words. Some say she spoke of her sons, William and Harry. Others claim she said nothing. Then, a firefighter's testimony emerged 2 decades later, saying Diana mumbled something like, "My God, what's happened?" Or, "Oh my God, leave me alone." The bodyguard, who has now stepped forward, supports the idea that she was indeed conscious, if only for a short time, and was confused by the chaos around her. He explains that first responders rushed to give Diana oxygen and stabilize her neck. At that moment, the adrenaline must have kicked in. The bodyguard says that the image of her awake, even if somewhat disoriented, is both heartbreaking and comforting. It's comforting because she was not instantly gone. Heartbreaking because it highlights that help arrived, but still couldn't save her. He also indicates that Diana actually had a faint pulse while being transferred to the ambulance. That small sign of life gave paramedics hope that they could pull her through once they got to the hospital. He mentions how the fireman, or Galen, was stunned when he learned the victim he tried to save was Princess Diana. He had no clue who she was in the immediate moment. He was just doing his job, attempting to save a blonde crash victim with minimal visible injuries. The bodyguard insists this detail underlines why so many claims about a conspiracy to have her killed don't ring true. Nothing about the crash scene looked staged. It was chaos and confusion, and no one had a clue they were dealing with royalty. Just people in dire need of help. In the ambulance, Diana slipped in and out of consciousness. She reportedly went into cardiac arrest, prompting frantic attempts at CPR. The bodyguard has heard from those who were there that for a few short seconds, it seemed like the medical team got her heart beating again. That glimmer of hope didn't last. The internal injuries that no one could immediately see would prove fatal. She passed away at the hospital hours later, while surgeons tried to fix the rupture near her heart. To this day, people argue about whether things could have been different if Diana had been rushed to the hospital faster, or if the ambulance had used a different route. The bodyguard is honest in his stance. We'll never know. He's heard the paramedics argue that the French approach to emergency care is different from the British style, that on-scene stabilization took priority over immediate transport. Regardless, it's clear Diana was far more severely hurt than her outward appearance suggested. In the end, her final words were likely the bewildered murmur of someone who realized something horrible had happened, but wasn't totally aware of how life-threatening it was. The paparazzi dilemma. The final puzzle piece is the paparazzi. For a while, the entire world blamed them, and many still do. Some say that if it weren't for the relentless chase, the driver wouldn't have sped, and Diana wouldn't have died in that tunnel. Others argue that while the paparazzi's behavior was bad, the bigger problem was the presence of an intoxicated driver behind the wheel. The bodyguard offers a more nuanced view. In his mind, the paparazzi were definitely contributing to the tension and panic, but the entire security apparatus around Diana had collapsed under the weight of her newfound independence. He insists that the paparazzi's aggression was no new phenomenon. Diana had faced them from the moment reporters learned of her relationship with Prince Charles all those years ago. She was used to stepping off a curb while a cluster of cameras blocked her path. She had even cooperated with some journalists in the past, trying to harness the media's power to promote her charitable causes. But her romance with Dodi brought a new level of frenzy. Tabloids couldn't get enough of the millionaire's playboy son and the world's most famous ex-royal. Everyone wanted that exclusive shot, maybe a kiss, a whisper, a moment of tension. The financial rewards for such photos were enormous, spurring the paparazzi to drive recklessly through Paris in pursuit. Yet the bodyguard says it's too simplistic to say the paparazzi alone caused the crash. He points out that Dodi was also determined to slip away undetected, rushing out into the night against any better judgment. The security detail was so scattered that they ended up relying on a deputy head of Ritz security with an unconfirmed blood alcohol level. The bodyguard calls it a perfect storm. Sure, the paparazzi's pushy presence was the flashpoint, but every step up to that point was flawed. He believes that if any single safeguard had been in place, say, if a professional chauffeur with a sober background had been driving, Diana might have arrived safely at Dodi's apartment. The paparazzi were intrusive and callous, but they weren't the sole reason the car crashed at high speed. He also remembers hearing about how some paparazzi, after the accident, rushed forward with cameras instead of offering help. That, he says, is a moment that reveals how twisted the tabloid culture was. Emergency personnel had to push them back. Meanwhile, the bodyguard was fielding frantic calls from staff wanting updates on Diana's condition. Some paparazzi claimed they were just doing their jobs, while others insisted they had tried to help once they realized how severe the crash was. Regardless, the damage was done. In the months and years after Diana's death, there was a global outcry over paparazzi tactics. People demanded new laws, new protections. Yet, the bodyguard feels that the world has a short memory. Over time, sensational pictures still fetch high prices, and paparazzi culture hasn't disappeared. In his view, Diana's death could have led to a real overhaul, ensuring celebrities or public figures were better shielded from reckless pursuit. Instead, the conversation fizzled out, overshadowed by conspiracy theories, official investigations, and changing headlines. He calls the entire night a giant security failure, because so many systems that should have protected Diana left her exposed. She was no longer a royal highness with tight palace protocols, and she hadn't yet established her own bulletproof network of experienced security. Dodi's wealth and connections, ironically, did not translate into the safest possible environment. The paparazzi just turned up the pressure, turning a risky strategy into a lethal one. Confrontations with the royal establishment and legal hurdles. When the shocking car crash in Paris claimed Princess Diana's life, millions worldwide turned to the royal family for comfort and answers. Many people felt the monarchy should have offered a warmer, more transparent response to the tragedy. Suddenly, a quiet tension seeped out into the open. Private frustrations boiled over, and individuals searched for someone to blame. In the middle of this storm stood the princess's on and off security circle, a small group of men charged with keeping her safe, yet powerless on that fateful night. Eventually, one of these men chose to speak out. For years, the bodyguard had been more than just a silent figure in Diana's orbit. He knew the lines of succession, the restrictions of palace protocol, and the consequences of stepping out of place. But in the aftermath of the accident, the royal establishment tried to close ranks. That's when he realized there might be more at stake than simply defending the public image of the monarchy. Documents needed signing, hush-hush agreements were laid on the table, and he braced for confrontation. Some key palace aides wanted a smooth, simple narrative. Yes, it was all a terrible accident. Blame the driver. Condolences to the family. Let us move on. But the bodyguard felt something else brewing. Countless awkward questions nobody wanted to address. Had the princess been left with subpar protection once her divorce was finalized? Why did everything feel so uncoordinated that night in Paris? Why were certain eyewitness accounts brushed aside? The tension with the monarchy did not take the form of a flashy showdown in the corridors of Buckingham Palace, but rather subtle forms of pressure. Insiders murmured about whether the bodyguard should sign non-disclosure papers. Close associates hinted that legal trouble might arise if he ever contradicted official statements. To him, it was all too obvious that some corners of the royal establishment saw him as a loose end, someone who had no official place in the firm once Diana was gone. Others within the palace were more empathetic. They quietly admitted there was a deep sadness in how Diana's final hours played out, and they feared the scandal could spin out of control if too many conflicting stories emerged. The bodyguards saw it from both angles. The monarchy had lost one of its brightest stars, and the entire institution was staggering under public grief and growing media hostility. He also became wrapped up in the complicated swirl of legal proceedings. French authorities launched an investigation into the crash. British officials monitored from across the channel, keen to see how the blame game would unfold. Paparazzi who had chased Diana's car were briefly detained, then released. Some tabloids even tested the waters of sensational conspiracy theories, claiming that Diana had been targeted by shady forces. The bodyguard recalls feeling torn between his loyalty to the memory of the princess and the rules that came with any brush against royal life. Stepping forward could place him on a collision course with powerful individuals who had no interest in seeing the official reports questioned. He wasn't alone. Other staff members, including the late Diana's aides and butlers, also faced tough choices about talking to the media or cooperating with various legal teams. A few who had once been close to the princess gave interviews that stoked further allegations of a cover-up or hints of neglected safety protocols. The bodyguard, though, wanted to keep his head above water, mindful of not just the monarchy's lawyers, but also Dodi Fayed's father, Mohammed Al-Fayed, a man determined to prove a larger plot was at work. The tug of war between different factions left him exhausted. Why he's breaking his silence now? After the crash, the bodyguard didn't immediately rush to the press. He was haunted by guilt and plagued by nightmares about that chaotic night in the Pont de l'Alma underpass. He knew his story could easily be twisted or overshadowed by the frenzy of tabloid headlines clamoring for shocking details. For years, he remained in the background, trying to find normalcy in a world that could not stop talking about Princess Diana's death. When he looked in the mirror, he saw the face of someone who felt he had let down the one person he was supposed to protect. No matter how many times people pointed out that he wasn't the driver, and that Diana had made her own choices that night, he still shouldered the regret. He also carried around his memories of Diana. How she sipped tea with staff in the early evening, how she quietly supported her sons, and how she faced cameras with an almost unearthly calm. But he was aware of her private pain as well. Opinions about Diana had become polarized. Some cast her as a saintly figure. Others claimed she was manipulative. He knew her best as a kind, flawed individual under too much pressure. He found it increasingly painful to watch her legacy boil down to conspiracy theories, paparazzi standoffs, and old footage of that final summer with Dodi Fayed. Every few years, major anniversaries of Diana's passing triggered a wave of press coverage. The bodyguard would get calls from old colleagues or journalists, each seeking exclusive anecdotes. He consistently refused, telling himself it was better to let the official narrative stand. But time can change perspective. As he saw documentaries and articles sensationalize the same old angles, he began to suspect that people might benefit from a fresh viewpoint. Someone who had lived in her shadow. Someone who had no interest in fanning conspiracy flames, but also no desire to whitewash the chaos of that final night. Why speak out now? He says it was a slow process, not a single event. He began talking confidentially to a therapist, struggling with the trauma of seeing the princess lying in the wrecked car, her eyes sometimes fluttering as first responders tried to keep her alive. He confesses to nights spent awake, replaying the same images. Headlights cutting through smoky air, paparazzi yelling. The terrifying moment he realized it was Diana in mortal peril. As the nightmares persisted, he felt a need for catharsis, not just for himself, but for the public that still aches when they remember those headlines. So he decided enough was enough. He was done hiding behind the hush-hush environment that typically surrounds royal staff. What's it really like inside Buckingham Palace? For Princess Anne, the experience was not always as glamorous as it seems. While the palace represents royal grandeur, for Anne, it was often a place of tension, loneliness, and frustration. In her recent emotional farewell, she offered a rare glimpse into her life behind the palace walls, shattering the illusion of royal perfection. What she revealed about her time there might surprise you, and it's not the fairy tale life that the world imagines. Anne's perspective provides a new understanding of what it means to live under the shadow of the monarchy, offering a candid look at the struggles that many royals face but seldom speak about. Anne didn't hold back in her reflections, revealing that the life of luxury associated with Buckingham Palace often came at the cost of personal freedom. The pressure of being a royal meant constantly living under the public's microscope, and Anne spoke about the personal toll this took. She explained how, despite being surrounded by wealth and privilege, there was always an emotional void. Anne's decision to leave the palace is a powerful statement about the complexities of royal life that go beyond public perception. It's easy to look at the grandeur of Buckingham Palace and imagine a life of ease, but Anne's experience was filled with sacrifices and struggles that few could understand. What Anne's farewell makes clear is that being a member of the royal family often means being trapped in a gilded cage. The expectations placed on royals to maintain a perfect image are immense, and for Anne, it became unbearable. She admitted that while the palace offered the finest things in life, it also demanded much more than she was willing to give. Her words shed light on the emotional toll of being royalty, where duty and public image often take precedence over personal happiness. Was Princess Anne finally breaking free from this cycle? Or was she simply reclaiming her voice after years of being silenced by tradition? Anne's candid reflections have sent shockwaves through the royal world, as they challenge the widely held belief that the palace life is one of ease and indulgence. She revealed a side of her life that few outsiders had ever known. It wasn't just about leaving Buckingham Palace, it was about taking back control over her own life and identity. The public has long been fascinated by the royal family's carefully crafted image, but Anne's openness has shattered that image, exposing the deep personal cost of being part of one of the world's most famous families. So what does this mean for the future of the royal family? Anne's words have created a ripple effect, prompting many to reconsider their views on the monarchy. Could this be the first step toward change within the royal family? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain: Princess Anne's story will never be the same again. Secret struggles at Buckingham Palace revealed. Princess Anne's farewell to Buckingham Palace wasn't just a goodbye. It was an admission of the secret struggles she faced living within its walls. For decades, the public viewed Anne as the steady, unflappable royal, never one to show weakness or vulnerability. But in her emotional speech, Anne peeled back the curtain and revealed what life inside the palace really cost her. Behind the polished image of a dutiful royal was a woman who felt confined, isolated, and constantly under pressure. What led Anne to finally expose these deeply personal struggles? And what does this mean for the future of the monarchy? In her farewell speech, Anne admitted that the pressures of royal life often made her feel as though she was living in a bubble. While Buckingham Palace is a symbol of tradition and history, it also came with its own set of challenges. Anne revealed that, despite the beauty and prestige of the palace, she often felt trapped by the expectations placed upon her. It was as though the weight of royal duty was constantly bearing down on her, leaving little room for personal growth or happiness. The isolation Anne felt within the palace walls was palpable, and for the first time, she allowed the world to see this vulnerable side of her. What was most shocking about Anne's revelation was how much she had sacrificed over the years. While the public saw her as the strong, reliable royal, Anne's internal battle was one of emotional strain and exhaustion. She spoke openly about the loneliness she faced, despite being surrounded by family and staff. Buckingham Palace, which was supposed to be her home, often felt more like a prison. In revealing this, Anne shattered the perception that royals have everything they could ever want. Her truth opens up a new conversation about the hidden emotional toll of being a royal. Anne's emotional speech also highlighted the immense pressure that comes with being part of the royal family. She shared that the constant scrutiny, the public's expectations, and the need to maintain a perfect image were all-consuming. But despite all of this, Anne confessed that there was a part of her that always longed for a simpler life, one where she could live without the weight of the monarchy hanging over her. Anne's farewell was a deeply personal reflection on the sacrifices she had made and the toll it had taken on her over the years. In sharing her struggles, Princess Anne has opened the door to a deeper understanding of what it means to live as a member of the royal family. Her decision to finally speak out is a courageous step that may inspire others within the monarchy to also share their truths. What will this mean for the future of the royal family? Only time will tell, but Princess Anne's revelations have already begun to shift the conversation in ways no one could have anticipated. Why could this change royal history? Princess Anne's decision to leave Buckingham Palace is one that will undoubtedly echo through royal history. But why did she make this unprecedented move? And what does it mean for the monarchy's future? In her farewell speech, Anne made it clear that her decision wasn't just about seeking peace. It was about challenging the very structure of the monarchy itself. For the first time in history, a royal of Princess Anne's stature is questioning the monarchy's traditional values and its grip on her life. This bombshell announcement could reshape the future of the royal family in ways that no one expected. Princess Anne's departure is far from a simple exit. It's a symbolic act of defiance. For decades, the monarchy has been built on a foundation of tradition, duty, and control. But Anne's decision suggests that the royals may not be as invincible as they once seemed. Anne's words struck a nerve, as they called into question the very system that has governed the royal family for centuries. Could this be the beginning of a larger movement within the monarchy to modernize and adapt to the changing times? If Princess Anne's exit is any indication, the royal family might soon face an existential crisis that could force it to evolve or risk losing its relevance. The implications of Anne's decision are far-reaching. For years, the royal family has been seen as an institution that is above reproach. But Anne's bold farewell shows that even the most stalwart members of the royal household can feel the weight of tradition and the burden of duty. What does this mean for the future of the monarchy? Could we see more royals speaking out or stepping away from their royal roles in the future? Princess Anne's farewell has opened the floodgates for a larger conversation about the role of the monarchy in modern society. As the world digests Anne's shocking announcement, it's clear that the monarchy is at a crossroads. Will Princess Anne's decision to leave Buckingham Palace inspire a new era for the royal family, one that embraces change and transparency? Or will it serve as a reminder of the challenges and struggles that even royals face when living in the public eye? Only time will reveal what comes next, but one thing is certain. Princess Anne's decision will forever alter the course of royal history. The Hidden Princess. Anne's emotional departure from Buckingham Palace has sent shockwaves through the royal family. But behind her heartfelt farewell lies a hidden truth that the public has never known. Until now. Anne's decision wasn't just about leaving a building. It was about leaving behind a system that had long dictated her life. Her words uncovered the raw emotions that have been building for years, offering an inside look into what life inside Buckingham Palace is really like. Was Anne's decision driven by personal dissatisfaction, or was there something more at play? This shocking revelation challenges everything we thought we knew about royal life. In her speech, Anne confessed that her decision to leave was a long time coming. Despite being a respected member of the royal family, she had always felt like an outsider in her own home. Buckingham Palace, despite its grandeur, had become a place where Anne felt increasingly isolated and disconnected. Her words hinted that the palace had long been a symbol of duty and sacrifice, but not of personal happiness. Could it be that Anne's emotional departure is a statement against the monarchy's rigid structure? If so, what does this mean for other royals who may feel similarly trapped by tradition? Anne's farewell marks a turning point in how we view the royal family's internal dynamics. While the world may have thought of Anne as the dutiful royal who followed the rules, her words have shown us a woman who is ready to break free from the expectations placed upon her. This is not just a story about a royal departure. It's a story about reclaiming one's life and identity in the face of overwhelming pressure. As Princess Anne steps away from Buckingham Palace, she leaves behind a legacy that could change the way we view royalty forever. So, what does this mean for the future of the royal family? Anne's decision to leave has created a ripple effect that will be felt for generations. Her willingness to speak out and take control of her own destiny may inspire others within the monarchy to do the same. Will we see more royals breaking away from their roles, or is Princess Anne's departure a one-time act of defiance? Only time will tell. But one thing is for sure. Princess Anne's farewell will go down in history as one of the most surprising and impactful moments in royal history. What this means for the royal family. Princess Anne's departure from Buckingham Palace is not just a personal moment, it's a symbol of a much deeper shift within the royal family. For centuries, the monarchy has been seen as a monolithic institution, with members expected to follow strict protocols and carry out their royal duties with little room for personal choices. But Anne's emotional farewell hints at a broader change that is bubbling beneath the surface. Could her decision to leave represent the first crack in the royal facade, a sign that the royal family is finally confronting the immense pressures of modern life? Anne's farewell is not just about her stepping down from a royal role. It is an invitation to reconsider how the monarchy functions in the 21st century. In an age where personal autonomy and mental health are gaining more recognition, Anne's words suggest that even the royals are not immune to the struggles that many of us face. The world has long admired the royal family for its strength, poise, and tradition. But Anne's departure reminds us that even they have their limits. Could this be the first step in a larger evolution of the monarchy? A shift where individual needs are placed alongside royal duties. What makes Anne's exit so compelling is how it intersects with the struggles that many of the younger royals have been quietly facing in recent years. From Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's decision to step away from royal duties to the increased scrutiny placed on younger generations, there is a growing sense that the monarchy may be on the verge of a major transformation. Anne's farewell has opened the door for future conversations about what it means to be a royal in the modern age. And in doing so, she has set a precedent that may influence how the next generation of royals approach their roles. Despite the shockwave caused by Anne's words, one has to wonder, how much of this is tied to her personal experience, and how much of it reflects a larger desire for change within the royal family? Anne's life has been marked by a deep sense of duty, but her emotional farewell suggests that even she has struggled with the weight of tradition. It's a moment that calls for reflection, not only for Anne, but for all of us as we consider the evolving nature of royalty, leadership, and individual freedom. In the end, Princess Anne's departure isn't just about her leaving Buckingham Palace. It's a symbol of change, a challenge to the status quo, and a call for deeper conversations about how the royal family can adapt to the modern world while still honoring its history. The future of the monarchy is in flux, and Anne's bold decision may have been the catalyst that sparks a much-needed dialogue about the personal lives of royals and their ability to forge their own paths. Princess Anne's emotional farewell to Buckingham Palace has left an indelible mark on the royal family's history. Her decision to step away is a powerful statement that challenges the very foundation of royal life as we know it. But what does it mean for the future of the monarchy? Will other royals follow in her footsteps, or is this a unique moment of defiance that will forever change how we see the family? As the royal world processes Anne's shocking words, one thing is clear: the monarchy will never be the same again. Do you think Princess Anne's decision will inspire other royals to break free from tradition? Or will the royal family close ranks and continue with business as usual? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this explosive look into Princess Anne's life and the royal family's internal struggles, don't forget to hit the like button, share this video, and subscribe for more eye-opening royal revelations. You won't want to miss the next story. We have more shocking updates coming soon.
Can't mimic voices for love or money. I'm completely hopeless at it. I was the only one, so I think she carved her own role.
Queen Camilla's rise to prominence as King Charles III's wife has been one of the most talked-about transformations in modern royal history. Before her marriage to Charles in 2005, Camilla was married to Andrew Parker Bowles, a former member of the British military. Together, they had 2 children, Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes. While Tom often draws attention for his culinary career and occasional public appearances, Laura has remained far more private, choosing to stay out of the royal spotlight as much as possible. However, recent revelations by Laura have shocked royal observers and the public alike, as she spoke candidly about her mother's controversial journey to the throne and the impact it had on her personal and professional life. Her story sheds light on the unique struggles she faced as someone pulled into the royal fold without choice. offering an intimate perspective rarely shared by those adjacent to the monarchy. Laura Lopes was born on January 1st, 1978, into a world of British upper-class privilege, but far removed from royal traditions. As the daughter of Camilla and Andrew Parker Bowles, Laura grew up in an environment of wealth and status, attending Haywood Preparatory School and later pursuing a degree in the history of art at Oxford Brookes University. During her formative years, Laura lived a relatively normal, albeit privileged life with her brother Tom. However, even during her childhood, the whispers and rumors surrounding her mother's relationship with Charles began to seep into her reality. The media's relentless coverage of Camilla as the other woman in Charles and Diana's marriage created an unwanted shadow over Laura's life. Friends, teachers, and even strangers would make assumptions about her based solely on her mother's public image. For a young girl trying to understand the complexities of relationships and trust, these experiences forced her to mature quickly. Laura has described her formative years as turbulent, marked by a deep tension between her mother's devotion to family and the public perception of her as a villain. The divorce of her parents in 1995, fueled by years of rumors about Camilla's affair with Charles, was another difficult chapter for Laura. Though shielded from the media as much as possible, she couldn't escape the indirect effects of the public scrutiny that engulfed her family. Yet through it all, Laura maintained a strong bond with her mother. She admired Camilla's ability to remain composed and resilient, even when she was one of the most criticized figures in the British press. When Camilla married Charles in 2005, Laura's life changed dramatically. Unlike Prince William and Prince Harry, who were born into royalty and grew up under the spotlight, Laura was thrust into the royal world as an adult. This abrupt transition was far from easy. While her mother embraced her new role as Duchess of Cornwall, Laura found herself struggling to reconcile her private life with the expectations of her new royal connections. Attending public events with her mother and stepfather brought an overwhelming amount of attention she never sought. She often felt out of place, especially during high-profile events where royal protocols clashed with her desire to remain in the background. One of the most fascinating aspects of Laura's story is her relationship with her stepbrothers, Prince William and Prince Harry. Their interactions have been described as polite, but distant. It is no secret that William and Harry have struggled with their father's relationship with Camilla. Both princes have spoken openly about the pain caused by their parents' divorce and Charles's affair, which undoubtedly created a natural barrier between them and Laura. According to reports, heated arguments occasionally broke out between Laura and William in the early years after Camilla and Charles's marriage. William, feeling protective of his late mother, Princess Diana, would sometimes criticize Camilla, blaming her for his mother's unhappiness. Laura, fiercely loyal to her own mother, would push back, arguing that Charles's actions had caused just as much difficulty for her family. These disagreements highlight how both William and Laura coped with the emotional fallout of their parents' past, but from very different perspectives. Despite these tensions, Laura has largely avoided engaging in any public disputes. Unlike Harry, who has been vocal about his grievances with the royal family, Laura has chosen to stay silent, focusing on her own life and career. However, the release of Harry's memoir, Spare, reignited old wounds. In the book, Harry described Queen Camilla as a dangerous figure who prioritized her public image over the well-being of others. While Laura did not directly respond to Harry's claims, reports suggest she was deeply hurt by the accusations. The fallout from the memoir has added another layer of complexity to Laura's relationship with her stepbrothers, making an already fragile dynamic even more strained. Professionally, Laura has built an impressive career as an art gallerist, establishing her independence from the royal family. She worked at prestigious institutions, including the Peggy Guggenheim Collection in Venice, and later co-founded 11 Gallery in London, which focuses on promoting emerging artists. Her work in the art world has allowed her to carve out her own identity, separate from her royal connections. Friends describe Laura as independent, grounded, and uninterested in the trappings of royalty. Even after her mother became queen consort, Laura continued to prioritize her career and family, avoiding the spotlight whenever possible. In her personal life, Laura has also sought stability and privacy. She married Harry Lopes, a former model and chartered accountant, in 2006. Their wedding, held at St. Cyriac's Church in Wiltshire, was attended by members of both the Parker Bowles and royal families. Laura's choice of Anna Valentine to design her wedding dress, a nod to the same designer who created Camilla's bridal gown for her marriage to Charles, highlighted her quiet connection to her mother. Together, Laura and Harry have 3 children, Eliza, and twin boys Gus and Lewis. Laura has been fiercely protective of her children, determined to give them as normal an upbringing as possible. While Eliza briefly entered the public eye as a bridesmaid at Prince William and Kate Middleton's wedding in 2011, Laura has largely kept her family away from royal events. Her focus has been on creating a grounded and private life for her children, free from the pressures of their royal connections. Despite her efforts to remain private, Laura's ties to the royal family inevitably draw her into the public eye from time to time. She has attended significant events, including the coronation of King Charles III and Queen Camilla in 2023, where her twin sons served as pages of honor. The boys' participation was a poignant moment, symbolizing the blending of Camilla's old and new family. Yet, even on such occasions, Laura's discomfort with public attention is apparent. Insiders note that while she fulfills her duties gracefully, she often remains on the periphery, avoiding unnecessary interactions with key royal figures. Laura's relationship with her mother is one of the most compelling aspects of her story. While she deeply admires Camilla's resilience and ability to overcome public criticism, Laura has also acknowledged the challenges their family faced as a result of Camilla's role in Charles's life. Camilla's decision to fully embrace her royal duties created a sense of distance between mother and daughter, depriving them of the simpler, more private moments they once shared. Yet, through it all, their bond remains strong. Laura has been described as one of Camilla's closest confidants, a voice of reason and support during difficult times. Royal insiders even claim that Laura is the only person Camilla truly fears, highlighting the depth of their relationship and the mutual respect they share. The media's relentless focus on Laura has been a source of frustration for her. Every significant event in her life, from her marriage to the births of her children, has been closely scrutinized by the British press. Laura has expressed frustration that her achievements are often overshadowed by her mother's history and the controversies surrounding the royal family. She has worked tirelessly to build a life defined by her own merits, but her connection to Queen Camilla and King Charles III continues to complicate her efforts to remain private. Adding to her challenges, Laura's professional ventures have not always been smooth. Her fashion boutique, Mojo & McCoy, which she co-founded with friends, recently closed after facing difficulties in the retail industry. The boutique, located in Hungerford, was initially seen as a promising business, stocking high-end brands and catering to the affluent local community. However, despite Laura's best efforts, the store struggled to stay afloat. Reports suggest that Laura may seek advice from King Charles before embarking on a new business venture, as she has been impressed by his ability to navigate tough situations. This acknowledgement of Charles's guidance highlights the evolving dynamic between Laura and her stepfather, as well as her willingness to lean on him for support when needed. Laura's future remains a subject of speculation. While rumors occasionally surface about the possibility of her and her brother Tom receiving royal titles, both have firmly denied such claims. Laura has made it clear that she has no interest in becoming a public figure or taking on formal royal duties. Instead, she continues to focus on her family, her art career, and her desire to lead a life that is as normal and private as possible. Yet, as the daughter of Queen Camilla, Laura's attempts to separate herself from the royal family may never fully succeed. Her presence at key events and her role as a supportive daughter and mother ensure that she will always remain connected to the monarchy in some way.